You've probably seen it. The Korean peninsula, lit up like a normal night sky in the south, and then just nothing. A black hole where a country should be. Same peninsula, same people, same language, same history, same dirt in the ground, going back thousands of years. And yet, if you're born a few miles south of that line, you'll live about 12 years longer than if you're born a few miles north of it. You'll make, on average, more than 20 times the money. You'll have never once thought about whether there'd be food tomorrow. That's not a small gap. That's not one country's doing a bit better. That's two completely different realities, separated by a line on a map that didn't even exist 100 years ago.
So what happened? Why does one side get all the lights and the other side gets none of them? Most people reach for the easy answers. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's natural resources. Maybe, and people really do say this, it's just that some cultures work harder than others. All three of those answers feel true. All three of them are wrong. And once you see why they're wrong, you start noticing this same pattern everywhere. Not just in Korea, but all over the map.
Let's start with a smaller, weirder example, because it makes the point even faster than Korea does. There's a town on the border of Arizona and Mexico called Nogales. Actually, it's two towns, Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Sonora, split right down the middle by a fence. Same name, same valley, same weather, same food, same music. In a lot of cases, the same extended families, with relatives on both sides of that fence who see each other every week. Walk across from the Mexican side to the American side, and instantly, statistically, your odds change. Income jumps. Life expectancy jumps. Kids on one side of that fence are far more likely to finish school than kids a few hundred feet away on the other side. Nothing about the land changed. The soil's the same. The sun rises at the same time on both sides. So if it's not geography, and it's clearly not the people, since it's often literally the same families, then what's actually different?
Here's the pattern you'll see over and over in this video. Whenever you find two places that are almost identical except for one thing, that one thing is usually the real answer. And in every one of these split cases, Korea, Nogales, and a bunch of others we'll get to, the one thing that's different isn't the land, and it isn't the people. It's the rules. We'll get to exactly what the rules means in a minute. But first, let's clear out the excuses, because you've definitely heard all three of them before.
Excuse number one, it's the weather. Poor countries tend to be closer to the equator. Hot climates, tough farming conditions, so maybe that's just unlucky geography. Except, Singapore sits almost exactly on the equator. Brutally hot, humid, no natural resources to speak of, barely any land at all. It's also one of the richest countries on Earth. Meanwhile, you've got countries with mild, pleasant climates that have been stuck in poverty for generations. If weather decided the outcome, Singapore shouldn't exist as a success story. It very much does.
Excuse number two, it's natural resources. Maybe rich countries just got lucky and are sitting on oil or gold or fertile land, and poor countries didn't. This one's almost backwards. Some of the resource-richest countries on the planet, sitting on oil reserves worth trillions, have some of the worst poverty rates in the world. Meanwhile, Japan has almost no natural resources of its own. It imports nearly everything it needs to build anything, and it's one of the largest economies on Earth. If anything, having a ton of valuable resources sitting in the ground has hurt some countries more than it's helped them, because it gives whoever's in charge something to fight over instead of something to build.
Excuse number three, the one people are most uncomfortable saying out loud, but definitely think. Maybe it's culture. Maybe some societies just value hard work more. Here's the problem with that one. Remember Nogales? Same families, split by a fence.
Remember Korea? Same culture, same history, split by a border that's only 70-some years old. If culture were the deciding factor, you'd expect it to take generations to show up as a gap. Instead, in both of these cases, the gap opened up within a single lifetime. That's not culture. Culture doesn't change that fast. Something else changed that fast. So if it's not the weather, and it's not the resources, and it's not the people, what's left?
The actual answer is almost annoyingly simple to say, and it takes the rest of this video to really show you what it means. It's the rules. Specifically, who the rules protect. Think about it like this. In some countries, if you start a small business and it does well, the rules protect you. You can keep what you build. Nobody in power can just show up and take it from you because they feel like it. Courts actually settle disputes fairly, whether you're powerful or not. Property is genuinely yours.
In other countries, the rules exist to protect whoever's already at the top. If your business gets successful enough to notice, someone with more power than you can simply take it. Through a bribe demand, a rigged court case, a new regulation written specifically to squeeze you out. So people stop trying to build anything big. Why would you? Any wealth you create isn't really yours to keep. That's the whole difference, boiled down. One system says, build something and it stays yours. The other system says, build something and it becomes a target.
Multiply that single incentive across an entire population over multiple generations, and you get two completely different countries. Not because the people are different, because what happens to their effort is different. Okay, real quick, before we get into how this split actually happens historically, because it's a genuinely wild story, if this is the kind of thing you find interesting, that's honestly most of what we make here. Hitting subscribe on Compound Economy means you won't miss the next one, and it actually helps a lot on our end. Okay, back to the story, because this next part is where it gets crazy.
So how does a country end up with one type of rules instead of the other? A lot of the time, you can trace it back to a specific moment, often a colonial one, where an outside power showed up and made a choice that stuck for centuries. Here's a version of that story that plays out again and again. When European powers colonized different parts of the world, they generally did one of two things, depending on the place. In some regions, they found land that was livable, with a climate they could survive in long term, and they built settlements meant to last. Real towns, real institutions, courts, property rights, all built with the intention that colonists and their descendants would live there permanently. Over time, those temporary colonial institutions turned into permanent, functioning ones. That's roughly the story behind places like the United States, Canada, and Australia. In other regions, the climate was harsher for the colonizers. Disease was a serious threat, and there was no plan to settle permanently. The whole point of being there was to extract as much value as possible: minerals, crops, labor, and ship it back home. So instead of building institutions meant to last, they built institutions meant to extract. Forced labor systems, courts that existed to protect the extraction, not the people living there. And when independence eventually came, decades or centuries later, those extractive systems didn't just disappear. The new local leaders who took over often just kept using the same machine, pointed at themselves instead of the old colonial power.
This is the fork in the road. Two colonies, sometimes right next to each other, sometimes even run by the same empire. But one got institutions built to last, and one got institutions built to strip value out. Centuries later, you can still see the outline of that original decision in GDP charts today. It's not that one group of people made better choices than another. It's that one group inherited a system built to let regular people keep what they earn, and the other group inherited a system built to funnel everything upward. Once that split happens,
it doesn't just fix itself, which is the next problem.
Here's the frustrating part. Bad rules don't just sit there quietly, waiting to be replaced. They actively protect themselves. Think about who benefits from a system where whoever's in power can take whatever they want. The people in power, obviously. So they have every reason to keep that system exactly as it is. Reform threatens the same people who'd have to approve the reform. That's the trap. And here's the part that really surprises people. Sometimes a country will look at a wealthy neighbor, copy their playbook almost exactly. Same constitution structure, same official laws on paper, sometimes literally translated word for word. And it still doesn't work. Because the actual rules a country runs on aren't just whatever's written down. It's whatever's enforced. You can copy the paperwork. You can't copy paperwork enforcement, trust in courts, or a population that actually believes the system will protect them if they try to build something. That stuff takes decades to earn, and it can't be faked by copying a document. So the gap doesn't close on its own. If anything, it tends to widen, because a country with fair rules keeps compounding. More people take the risk to build something. More wealth gets created. More of that wealth gets reinvested. While a country with extractive rules keeps losing its most ambitious people to countries where their effort will actually count for something. Which raises an obvious question. If it's this hard to escape, has anyone actually done it? A few have, and their stories all rhyme in an interesting way. Take Botswana. At independence, it was one of the poorest places on the planet. And unlike a lot of neighboring countries, it also happened to discover major diamond reserves not long after. Historically, that combination is a disaster. Remember, discovering valuable resources usually makes extractive systems worse, not better, because it gives whoever's in charge something huge to fight over and steal. Instead, Botswana's early leadership made a deliberate choice to build strong, transparent institutions before the diamond money really started flowing. Clear property rights, relatively low corruption compared to its neighbors, and a system where that diamond wealth got funneled into public infrastructure and education instead of a handful of private pockets. Today, it's one of the wealthiest and most stable countries in the region, sitting on the exact same kind of resource windfall that's wrecked other nations nearby. Or take South Korea. Go back to the 1950s, and South Korea was poorer than a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa at the time. Genuinely one of the poorest places on Earth, just devastated by war. Over the following decades, it built strong property protections, invested heavily in education, and created a system where success got rewarded and kept, rather than confiscated. You know the rest of that story, because it's the lit-up half of that photo from Chapter 1. Neither of these transformations happened by accident, and neither happened overnight. But they both prove the same point. The trap is real, but it's not a life sentence. Countries have walked out of it, which means the current gap between rich and poor countries isn't some permanent law of nature. It's the result of specific decisions, and decisions can, eventually, get made differently. So next time someone tells you a country is poor because of bad weather or bad luck, or because that's just how those people are, you now know that's almost never the real reason. The real reason is almost always about whether an ordinary person in that country gets to keep what they build. That single idea explains why the same peninsula, split by one line, ended up as two different planets. It explains why two towns with the same name, a few hundred feet apart, live in two different economic realities. And weirdly, it explains a lot about smaller gaps too, inside a single country, between one neighborhood and another, once you start looking for it. If you liked this one, that's basically the whole channel. We do one of these most weeks, digging into the hidden reasons behind stuff that looks like luck, but usually isn't. Subscribing to Compound Economy is the easiest way to not miss the next one. Next week, we're staying close to home with this exact same idea: why your paycheck doesn't feel like it's growing, even when, on paper, you're making more money than ever. Same story, just a lot closer to your own life.